You have wisely chosen to listen to the shittiest movie podcast in the land. Welcome to Let's Talk Movies.
I guess.
I love to shave my feet.
Welcome to Let's Talk Movies, I guess. This is Matt.
This is John.
We're just... we're back into it, I guess. We watched some movies this week.
We couldn't wait. We had to discuss them
at the behest of John. He was like, I got 2 more classics you need to see. I can't believe you didn't see these movies specifically from my childhood. So,
and we watched them today, so they're fresh on our mind. I watched the first one during my lunch break, and then the second one we just watched together.
And boy, howdy, wasn't that a treat?
That was a treat. Okay, the the listeners already know what movie this is, but we'll go ahead and reiterate.
I think you still have the first one stuck in your mind about hardcore drug use or something.
Hardcore treat abuse is more like it. Anyhow, the movies are The Buttercream Gang and The Buttercream Gang: Secret of Treasure Mountain.
I'm glad you remember what the subtitle was on the second one.
I have no idea what the subtitle was on that one. I just winged it.
I think you're close, though. I think that's pretty much right.
Also known as Nobody Cares About Eldon, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, including Eldon himself, which I guess is kind of like the whole point.
But anyhow, we don't want to get too far ahead of you because we imagine most of you have not seen this movie. But in the description, there will be links to YouTube where you can watch them. No, the first movie is available on public torrent sites. You might not find a lot of cedars. I actually bought the second one on Amazon from Goodwill. But it's also available on YouTube. So go ahead, pause this episode, watch it, try not to kill yourself, and then come back. Anyhow, what have you been up to this week, Matt? What have you been watching?
What have I been watching? The Buttercream Gang,
Yeah.
I feel like that. I've been like working a lot, and then I don't know. I mean, I watch a lot of YouTube more than I watch anything else, and I'm trying to think. I sat down to watch a few different like movies this week, but I don't even remember what they were. It's kind of like a weird week for me. Kind of hectically jumping back and forth between different like shifts at work and things, and so I've been getting more into like gaming too. Like I've been distracted by that, so probably a lot more to talk about on Enlightened Gamer than on this.
Great. Well, as always,
Sorry,
I feel
listeners.
like I've chosen the best co-host to watch movies with. But we should probably talk about what I've been watching this week, which is about the same as what you've been watching.
Great.
I have been watching more.
Glad I picked this guy to do a weekly podcast with.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I've been watching some more Impractical Jokers, but that's about it.
Great. I hope you had a lot to talk about with the Buttercream Gang.
Oh boy.
Let's start with...
Gee golly woo,
Let's start with the only question that's specific to our podcast, which is, why did you have me watch this, John?
Well, I come from a privileged position in this arrangement. I grew up in a very strictly conservative household, evangelical, and we got to see a lot of shit movies growing up. I mean, just the worst of the worst. I'm talking movies that make focus on the family movies look good.
So is this one the buttercream of the crap? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it is the buttercream of the crap. That would be correct, because it is one of the worst of the worst. There are worse movies than this, but not many. So just to give you a background, there was like a Mormon company called Feature Films for Families. I don't know much about them, but they would buy the rights to low-budget films that had certain values in them, and they would distribute the movies and market them through mail and through through phone. Like they would cold call people.
Yeah, that was one of the weird reviews I read. Was somebody who said, this got sent to me and my family in the mail, and we just watched it and we're like, yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, they ran like a really shitty Columbia House sort of thing.
Weird.
You would sign up and they would send you VHS of these low production value, just like saccharine sweet movies about good old Mormon/Christian values.
So they were like an original Loot Crate type company, where it's a subscription model. Like you're going to get a random VHS every month.
It's like a Loot Crate that the parents enjoy getting much more than the children.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I guess that explains how it ended up at your house too, right?
Yeah. Well, but back then I didn't watch a whole lot of movies. I mean, we would watch sometimes G-rated movies and they would get pulled out because somebody said "but" or "shut up." I mean, that's just kind of the background I came from. So these were, I could enjoy these movies knowing that they wouldn't get pulled out. The problem was the movies weren't good.
So how did this movie make it past that filter with all the hardcore gang stuff going on?
Well, a lot of the hardcore gang stuff occurred off camera, so that actually saved this movie.
There were moments of this film I wasn't sure if it was the Buttercream Gang or Gangs of New York.
Yeah. Or American Gangster, or the Sopranos,
The Departed, or something. I don't know.
Departed.
Yeah.
Oh my God! So before we get too far, I'll give you like a general, like gist of or synopsis of this movie. It's I mean, this is obviously for the users.
Wow!
I gotta switch out of work mode. I call people users. I'm in the listeners.
How do you know that hardcore drug addicts are the only people who listen to our podcast? Sorry, everyone.
Okay. Anyhow, the listeners,
Our parishioners.
It's just basically about a group of boys who have a gang where they do good deeds for their community. One of the boys, for some unknown reason, has to move to Chicago to live with his aunt. He automatically joins a gang and becomes a bad dude who buttons the top button on his shirt and no other buttons whatsoever. Comes back and just wreaks havoc. And by wreaking havoc, he steals Twinkies from the general store and roughs up the boys a little bit. And it's just basically about how the other boys come to deal with the fact that their friend Pete is no longer the same guy they thought he was, and throw in a whole bunch of Christian morals and lessons, and basically everything turns out okay.
As oft it does in real life too. So
absolutely.
I mean,
they even say in the movie, if you do good things will happen to you, which is a big old happy load of horse shit.
Yeah, no kidding, right? That's like that is almost insulting to anyone who's done a bunch of good things or tried really hard to affect something positively just to have it blow up in their face.
And even if you're coming from like an evangelical background, the Bible itself will tell you that bad things will happen to you sometimes when you do good things. So like, I don't know what message this movie is trying to spread, but it's...
That was one of my biggest problems with this movie is like, I kind of get where they're going morally with what they're trying to say, but I don't agree with it at all. And like, I don't think they're doing a great job either of just explaining what it is they're trying to say.
No, absolutely. There were some good life lessons along the way taught to the kid through his baseball coach and his dad. The main character, the protagonist being Scott, who is closest with the gangster Pete, who's trying to turn Pete around and realizing that he can't really change a person.
There are a couple really good moments. There's a moment with the baseball coach / reverend who's it's right after Scott, right? Scott blows the big game because Pete's being a jerk and saying stuff to him. And he's like losing his concentration. And yeah, so the Reverend's on the mound and he's kind of giving him this whole story about Mahatma Gandhi.
Basically gave him a sermon on the mound.
Wow. You know, I didn't think about that at all. That's really funny. Wow. I'm sure they didn't think of that either because I'm sure they weren't creative enough to take advantage of that. But it's kind of a cool moment. And I myself was like, this is maybe the most impactful part of this movie, or the only part that I'm trying to pay any attention to at all, other than the one where his dad is like on the patio and John's over here nodding and everything. So like, I don't know. You've seen this movie 6,000 times. I've seen it twice now. I feel like, it was only once, but it was so long.
The funny thing was like, the father gave a great story about his experience in Vietnam, and it was basically he just was throwing his pearls to swine because right after he tells the story, the boy's like, what if Pete doesn't want to be my friend anymore? And like, I just told you a story about how some guy I fought with died in my arms and blah, blah, blah. And the kid didn't care.
All right. Saved my life, even though he and I didn't really get along.
Because I made fun of him because he's one of those damn Christians.
Is that the story? Okay. So I was confused as to like, he's Scott, and he introduced himself as a Christian.
Like, hi, so the guy that Scott's dad fought with in Vietnam would introduce himself saying, hi, I'm Scott, I'm a Christian. And he said all the guys in the platoon, including him, Scott's dad, would make fun of him for that. So apparently he had some sort of impact on him after he died, and then he joined the wonderful Church of Mormon.
You know what I think these two moments are in this movie, though? Is like they're the real two human parts of this movie. Because the rest of it just feels like the Andy Griffith Show, and like every little boy in this movie is Opie, and every adult character is like somebody from Mayberry, right? Like, so I don't know. It just seems like the only moments where they're breaking down the walls of like, all right, here's something that actually happens in real life, and here's something where we're gonna like peel off this Mayberry type background and just tell you something to like speaking directly to Scott, who is, you know, the protagonist. So he's the audience, really, you know, he's the character who gets to learn the lessons the movie wants us to learn.
Yes. And there were some good lessons, and also they did a decent job. I thought the movie did a really good job, but I don't think it was their intent. I just think it happened to be a byproduct of what other things they were trying to do. But when the gangster was trying to explain to the protagonist why he didn't want to change and why he was becoming the person that he was becoming, it made sense. I mean, he had a terrible life. His parents died. He got shipped across the states to live with his aunt. He had no father figure in his life, no friends, and then they're trying to figure out why he joined a gang. It doesn't seem like rocket science to me.
Yeah, okay, so the beginning of this movie is confusing to me. Maybe I need to ask you as a veteran viewer of this movie, and me having watched it once. So Pete doesn't want to go to Chicago?
Well, he goes there under the guise of he's going to help his single aunt and
raise her boys.
Raise her two boys, yeah. Or help take care of the two boys, which we never see. But it also becomes quite evident throughout the movie that his grandfather that he's living with doesn't have a lot of money,
but then he's also going to Chicago to go to school, like college, I would assume.
No, it was high school.
High school?
Yeah. He's still a kid like the rest of the
Oh, and then he comes back during like summer. So this is like one of those summer supposedly feel-good movies.
Yeah, it's just like Stand By Me.
Just like it. Almost shot-for-shot remake.
Except the ending of Stand By Me is much more realistic to real life.
Yeah. That moment you're talking about, kind of where Pete's like, yeah, we spent this great day together and everything, and we were floating down the river on these rafts and having good times and being friends again, but it's not enough to just change me back and pretend that my life isn't what it is.
Yeah.
Like, Pete has a much better point than Scott does, and just be like, dude, just pretend, right? Like, just go through the motions.
To a certain point, you just want Scott to leave Pete alone and let Pete figure his life out. Because Scott has done the best he can to try to steer him back to the good Mormon way, but it's very clear that Pete's just not having it. So I definitely disagree with Scott just going way over the top to try to piss Pete off, giving him his bike and letting him beat the crap out of him. Yeah,
he's like the Boy Scout's Boy Scout. I don't know. It's too much, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I get it, turn the other cheek, but then like he's just bending over and giving him both his ass cheeks to go kick too. Like he's just giving him any fleshy part of his body just to get trounced on.
Well, I think in his
wildest
dreams he would be.
Well, yeah, there is
some weird
homoerotic elements to the movie.
Sometimes I don't know. It's not. I don't think they're supposed to be there. It's just in one of the 3 different full-length song montages that happen.
The same song.
Is it the same song all 3 times? Yeah.
So no, twice they have a montage with that song,
with
and then the credits roll on that song too.
Yeah. It's definitely featured in that film, though. It's not like a small part. It's like featured prominently.
Feature films for families production.
That's a good point. Trying to think of what I wanted to talk about with this movie, other than...
Well, I mean, there's some things we wanted to touch on, which is the bullying that occurs from this quote-unquote good guys. Oh, there's a lot of it.
Yeah, go ahead. Start us off.
So, basically, we have one character named Scott. Like we said, he's the protagonist, and then there are 2 friends of his who we barely know their name. It's Lonnie, I think, and Eldon. Okay, so I know where you're going here with this. I wasn't sure at first. Yeah, like the whole movie is about trying to bring Pete back to, the Buttercream Gang. And we're not bringing him back to Scott. Yeah, okay. So, I mean, maybe, but the whole idea, though, is like...
I don't know. Do they even really empathize with him at all? I think that's part of the problem too. I wanted to say like they feel bad for him, but they don't really.
Yeah, they never ask him like.
They just want to fix their
on
gang. Yeah, that's one of the things that like critically.
Kids, they have stable homes. They have two parents. They have people in the community that they're close with. Pete's got nothing, and they never ever go to Pete and say, "Hey, like." What's going on in your life? Or
that's the
what
thing,
happened in Chicago?
One of the few things, that pissed me off righteously in this movie is when you introduce something like that into a movie. Pete says, "You're just like everyone else. You never ask me what happened in Chicago." I'm like, "Oh, put a pin in that." Me as the viewer knows. Later on, we're going to find out what happened to Pete in Chicago.
And it's implied that he deals with the criminal justice system in some way or another because he does get arrested. We don't know. We don't know.
But is that what he's talking about? Because obviously that's not what happened to make him into a gangster.
Yeah, because he was already a gangster at that point.
Right.
And nothing new happened to his family. I mean, he'd already lost his parents, and his aunt was still single.
So it's a good point. What happened to you in Chicago? But we'll never find out. I mean, I don't know.
But the point I was getting at is you get this pretty decently developed character, Scott.
Hold on. No, that'd be really dumb. Because I'm thinking like, you know how the movie ends where the mayor's like, "These are the best boys in Chicago. They're in a gang, but they're a gang of do-gooders." Like that kind of crappy phoned-in movie ending where they're like,
saccharine.
"Oh crap, we just checked our bank account. We've got $100 to finish this piece."
Yeah, they couldn't even feature him. They just featured a black and white photo of him.
Right.
Shaking what I guess is Chicago's
mayor's hand. So in other words, some guy in a suit that was like, I could use $5. Sure. But, okay, so then what if the whole time he was working on this gang that was like supposed to be good guys, but then why does he come back to town and be an a-hole the entire time?
Well, because he didn't start the good gang till he moved back to Chicago.
Okay, and that's what I think the movie's trying to say, but I'm saying it'd be really stupid if it was like, you never asked me about my gang in Chicago. We're a bunch of do-gooders. Like, no, because like, well, then why would you come back and be an a-hole for there
was a scene where they burglarized an apartment, so I think that kind of puts an end to your fan theory.
How long do you think this movie, like, what's the timeline for Pete coming back and then going back to Chicago? They do 3 different montages, but you have no idea. It's gonna be like,
I think it's a year. It's 2 summers.
Is it?
Yeah, because he leaves at the end of one summer and then he comes back at the beginning, or he comes back in the spring, but they don't know he's back until the beginning of summer because it's like the final baseball game of the school year.
Yeah, but okay, but then that's not even any of the montages. Like, so I'm talking about once Pete's back, after he comes back and then he doesn't tell anyone.
Yeah.
That's when they start doing these montages. That's when they do this whole, like, we're going to be nice to Pete thing, and we're going to, pour hot burning coals on him just by being nice, and that whole religious mumbo jumbo type of thing. But, like, then how long before he goes back to Chicago? Because it's, like, definitely a very indeterminate amount of time.
There is no way to really tell. What I would like to point out, and I'm going to finish this point now.
Somewhere between first movie and second movie, Scott hits puberty, I think.
Yes, he does.
So it's obviously less than a year. All right, go ahead.
Okay. So like I said, they're fleshing out this Scott character. And ironically, they don't flesh out the other characters who are fleshy boys, but they have no personality, really. And one of them exists just for them to make fat jokes. He's either eating something, motivated by food, or has just eaten something and is looking for more food.
He's also completely stupid and incompetent.
Yes. And it's just kind of funny, the show about do-gooders, the whole time, everybody in this town is making fun of this kid because he's portly.
And it's completely fine. Like, no one has a problem with it from the adults who, I don't remember if they necessarily join in or not, but they definitely nod at the kids for being like, yeah, he is fat and stupid, right?
Yeah. But then this kid, it almost feels like the movie doesn't need him.
Oh yeah, well, or he doesn't
only know his name.
He doesn't need to bear the burden of being both the fat kid and the stupid kid.
Yeah,
because then the third kid in the Buttercream Gang has nothing other than showing up,
other than being not fat, and he can also do bike
instead
tricks.
Of also having the last name Baker and being related to the director somehow.
Yeah, and we'll get into that too. But yeah, so I don't know much about character development theory, but I know that you have to give...
Neither did the director.
Yeah, you have to give the viewers, a couple things about a character. You have to flesh out their character. They have to know more than just... Otherwise, they're just going to be... one-dimensional, and he is.
Oh, Eldon?
Yeah, Eldon is one-dimensional. He's
Lonnie's
a fat
like
kid.
zero-dimensional.
And yeah, he just exists as a thin kid who doesn't get made fun of.
But he's not thin either. And
No,
especially,
none of them are.
He might have put on weight between the first and second movies.
Oh, he did,
too,
because he's more barrel-assed than Lonnie in the second
yeah,
movie.
he's way fatter than Eldon, you mean. He's way fatter than Eldon in the second movie. I think. I don't know.
But yeah, so like there's this scene where they're riding through town because they're going to save the Widow Jenkins, who has fallen and cannot get up.
Who is referred to as
Widow Jenkins.
Widow Jenkins.
I can tell you, widows and widowers love to be referred to as widow or widower last name.
Thank you for perpetually reminding me that my husband or wife died.
Yes. I'm glad that has become my identity. Now help me up, little boy.
It's just to prove that they have one-dimensional characters.
So anyhow, they're riding their bikes through town, rushing, because this town has never heard of Life Alert. It's never heard of police. Never heard of
John,
EMS or the fire department.
Life Alert's just now getting to Chicago.
We'll get to that in a second. So anyhow, they're riding through town, and you hear these girls say, "Hi, Scott," as Scott rides by. Then, "Hi, Lonnie," as Lonnie rides by. Then, "Bye, Eldon," as poor fat Eldon rides by. It's like the running joke in this town that nobody
cinnamon bun the whole time.
Nobody likes Eldon because he's fat, and I thought that was pretty crappy, especially for a movie that's trying to deliver this kind of message, saying, "Hey, it's cool to make fun of fat kids and just make the fact that they're fat be their identity, and only refer to them or include them, or only motivate them with food."
Yeah, exactly. We left Eldon there to watch him. What? Do you think we're going to send him to get help?
Yeah.
Yeah, I told him we were going to get him a milkshake.
And then they come back, and there's this robbery going on. He's like, "Hey, where's my milkshake?
Where's my milkshake?"
So I guess the silver lining is he's not offended. He actually buys into it.
Well, yeah. Maybe until you get to Secrets of Treasure Mountain, right? That whole movie's about how, Eldon feels really bad about himself. I wonder why.
Yeah.
I wonder why he feels invalidated as like the third wheel to this Buttercream gang that's constantly shitting on him for no reason. So I don't know. Sorry, I don't know if you want to get into the second movie yet or not. I think we have a lot more to talk about in the first movie, obviously.
I think so. A few things I noticed. Production, obviously, pretty low budget. One thing that's frustrating as a viewer is you can watch certain things and say, I bet the director shoehorned that in because this person's a family member. There's a lot of scenes with these kids, like we're talking like 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old kids playing games and saying things in unison.
Particularly the girls.
Yeah, they say things in unison. Like there's a scene where a boy finds a beer cap, and all the girls say in unison, "A beer cap!" And I'm like, wow, these kids are so annoying. They must be related to the director. And sure enough, all the children extras have the same last name.
I think, like the girls who are trying to sucker Eldon out of the lemonade in the second movie. I think they're all like the same kids too, probably from the first one, that are like, "Widow Jenkins, she fell again," all this stuff.
It just felt very shoehorned.
Does she have like a webcam in her house or something? Or
no, the girls just go and peep, I guess.
Oh. That's
a good question. How did they know?
Peeping on an old lady? Is she like shouting that she fell or something?
And get this. So the boys are used to this routine of rescuing old Widow Jenkins. Why wouldn't she just give them a key? They had to go find an old rope from her garage that I guess Mr. Jenkins kindly left them, string it up on a tree, and then hoist a boy up. And then he starts swinging, climbs onto a banister, climbs through a window, goes down the stairs, lets his friends in through the front door. So like these kids are doing shit that could paralyze them if it goes awry. Yeah. Why wouldn't you just give him a key?
Well, I don't know. There's something of a criminal element that's been moving into Elkridge.
It's true. She's probably heard about the 1 out of 4 Buttercreamers is actually a cat burglar.
Can we talk about the name, the Buttercream Gang? And go ahead.
Did you catch the history of that?
Go ahead, Mr. Graff, and tell us all about the history of the Buttercream Gang.
So, in the beginning of the movie, the town shopkeeper or shopkeep, Mr. Graff, who has the only grocery store for 100 miles, I'm sure, tells the boys a story which I'm sure they've heard a million times about, but spares no detail, which is obviously directed towards the viewer, about how the Buttercream Gang was formed. It turns out, that despite the fact that his great-grandfather was one of the first Buttercreamers, the Buttercreamers weren't started until World War II. So
yeah,
it's
is that
a little
is
bit
that
of
a detail from the second movie?
Yeah,
Because I thought in the first movie, they talk about like being pioneer times or something.
a little bit of a goof there. So apparently, a bunch of the local men were killed in a raid in the war. So I guess they keep all the guys from one town and send them out to the same platoon, to the same.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Same assignment. Yeah, that's exactly how it works. It's not about your skill or what job you have. It's about where you live. So anyhow,
where are you from, soldier?
there were a bunch of widows in this town. So the group of
Not
draft
just
dodgers
Jenkins.
would go around, or I guess boys would go around and help them churn their butter, which, butter churning was a pretty popular thing to be doing during the 1940s.
Do you think there are like undertones to what's being said there?
I don't know.
While the men are at play, the boys will churn the butter, so to speak.
Here's the thing. I feel like the women, if they were really butter churners before their husbands left to go to war, they would be butter churners even if they died. Like, the men didn't churn the butter back in those days.
Plus, if we're talking... Okay, so we're going to assume World War II is our timeline, right?
Yeah.
Don't we hear a lot historically about how like women really stepped up to the plate?
Absolutely. They built airplanes. They built munitions.
We're talking like Rosie the Riveter type. And in 1942, who's needing their butter churned? Like, who's still using a butter churn other than like Amish
they have
women?
machines to do that crap. Women are busy working in the factories, supporting the war.
You could buy your salted or unsalted butter on the grocery store shelves just like anyone else.
Exactly. So it didn't make a whole lot of sense. I guess that would make more sense about the pioneer days, but anyhow.
Which is the story from the first movie, to be fair.
So, real quick exercise.
Okay.
You're a young lad who's healthy and you're helping out old ladies in town, but somehow you were able to
pretend.
avoid. You're able to avoid the draft. Let's take turns. Let's do about 6.
Okay.
Better names than the Buttercream Gang. Go.
Okay. The Golden Boys.
The Churners.
The Churners. The Butter Brigade.
The Do-Gooders.
The Handymen.
How about the Butter Churners? Like, anything is better than the Buttercream Gang. What the hell does buttercream have to do with butter churning? Like, I know it's a part of it where you separate the cream from the whatever. I don't know much about churning, but it just seems like they picked the name and then they reverse engineered a story to kind of fit the yes, the Cream Pie Boys, which it goes to support your theory that they were doing more than churning butter.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean,
but it just seems like someone picked that name. They said, "I like this name, the Buttercream Gang."
Oh yeah, they built the entire movie around that name.
Build a story around that name. Go. Yeah. That's exactly how that whiteboard session went.
Oh yeah, that was
from the writer's room, which is also the writer's bedroom. Before
the first line of dialogue was pen to paper, or the first, camera or lighting instruction, anything. Before this hit screenplay page 1, they had the Buttercream Gang in mind. Just, it's like not a good name. I don't know. Like maybe it's, hold on though, because you're thinking about not Focus on the Family. What's their name again? Feature Films for Families, yes. So you're thinking of a name of a gang, though, that sounds like completely non-offensive, non-threatening, like the Pussy Willows.
Emasculated.
Like, yes, exactly. So like maybe then it's perfect for what they're going for, and that this gang, you already know they're the do-gooders because their name's no one's intimidated by the Buttercream Gang.
No. Like even if they were running at me full speed with the churn handle, I would not be scared. And that's the thing, though. It's a very, it's not a masculine gang at all.
No.
And I know they wanted to kind of go the other direction.
It's barely a gang.
Maybe it was an anti-gang PSA?
It was 4 kids, and now it's 3 kids. And, it's a small town, but still, there's more kids in town than that.
Yeah.
So, I think that they're trying... Basically, these are the only 3 kids who will still be in the gang to maintain that it's the Buttercream Gang, and it's a heritage thing more than anything else. Like, nobody wants to be a buttercreamer.
No, especially with that name.
Yeah, something else, man. I don't know.
That's what makes it so hard to, even when I was telling Matt, hey, you gotta watch this movie, it's terrible. It's called the Buttercream Gang.
You know what's the worst part is that it's not outright terrible. It's just it's so, and it's not even long, I don't think. It's just boring.
It is. I mean, that could be attributed to a low budget, but the writing is not good, except for the scenes with the pastor / baseball coach and the father. I thought there were some decent. The writing was good. The delivery was good. They actually were decent actors.
Good enough, yeah. And for what you'd expect from feature films for families.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to win an Oscar, but I mean, those guys went above and beyond to do it, to put on a good performance.
They did fine.
Because the expectation was set pretty low.
Okay, yeah, I'll absolutely agree to that.
But bad actors, everyone else, including Pete, the antagonist, very bad actor.
Yeah, this
let's start
seems
with the
like,
wardrobe.
I don't know what it is necessarily, but it seems like it's like a film that was made off of a Kickstarter for like a local interest thing, where we're a small group of people in a church trying to raise money to, make a morally upright film about this and that. And they raised a certain amount of money, but they still took all these volunteers, or like the girls who needed lemonade were the $100 backing tiers, like kids from the parents who gave $100 or something.
I really think this had some sort of Mormon church had decided to make this film. I had to have been done by a church.
I would think somebody had an idea for this.
And but a bit of a production crew that was already in place.
I would love to talk to that person, because the overarching moral message didn't really hit home that hard for me.
And if anyone who listened to this was involved in any way with the movie, let us know. Drop us a comment or a tweet. We'd love to interview you.
Here's the thing. Yeah, I don't hate this movie. I don't necessarily dislike it. I don't think it was very impactfully powerful for me. And it's not like I'm not asking for a refund of my time, which, like with Baby's Day Out, I'm like kind of still harboring a little judgment against John for him making me even watch that, I think. But like, your movie doesn't hit home, I don't think. It's not like impactful. And maybe part of it has to do with just you're dealing with source material you're not familiar with, like gang violence or like degenerate youths. Like, you can tell that everyone who's cast in this movie doesn't have any of the problems their characters are pretending to portray. And
we should talk about wardrobe, because that kind of fits in with the fact that they don't really know about gangs. So yeah, Pete, in the very beginning of the movie, was wearing a deep V sweater with a t-shirt underneath it and baggy khakis. So basically, like, no boy ever in the 90s.
Well, no, I think the idea is they're trying to make it look like he's about to go to prep school or something.
Like, trying to make him look wholesome, but they fail so miserably. Like, I know what 90s style was like. Yes, it was baggy, but it was not deep V sweaters with a t-shirt underneath. Oh no, it was a cardigan, a deep V cardigan. He was wearing in the beginning scene where he's in the treehouse talking to the boys. So like. But I know they wanted to make it look like he was super wholesome. He would dress like
Sunday
your grandpa.
Best, and he's headed to see his single aunt to go help raise his boys. So he's a nice boy.
As soon as he joins the gang, he wears like a white, but not like a white t-shirt. He wears a white, like, Fruit of the Loom shirt. It's definitely just the way it fits. It looks like that. And then his hair, he has like a little pony or man bun thing.
He has a black t-shirt, I think, when he initially joins the gang. And he starts wrapping that bandana around his forehead.
And he's kind of got like a man bun.
But it's still, the black t-shirt's like, the sleeves get rolled up a little bit. But he's still tucking it into his like pleated khaki pants. And he's not a gangster. There's nothing about him that's
But the best part though was the other gangsters in Chicago.
Oh yeah, you can speak to them. I
they're
completely ignored them.
One of them's wearing a fedora. One of them's fat and like wearing this big like white undershirt.
Beards,
yeah, they're just neckbeard looking guys. They look nothing like gangsters of Chicago. Also, the set looks like a busy street in Utah.
You brought something to my mind. I want to talk about it because I think it's like one of the bigger points that I wanted to talk about. So if you don't mind, just like Pete's character development, there is none. Like, you talked about character development earlier and like where your characters are and where they've headed, where they're going. Pete just seems to do things completely on a whim. Like, he just has no idea why he's doing the things he's doing.
And we have no idea either because they give us bits and pieces of his backstory.
Well, that's what, like, they haven't earned this thing of like, Pete used to be such a good boy. I don't know that. I met Pete for 30 seconds in a treehouse where he's like, "Hey, Scott, you're the new Buttercream Gang leader. I got a weird accent that's going to get even more accentuated throughout this movie." And for whatever reason, we're just trusted to believe, oh, Pete must be this really good do-gooder who's like, show us 3 scenes.
We never saw him do any good.
The Buttercream Gang's doing something. Yeah. Have him be the one who's like, "Oh, I helped up the Widow Jenkins. Yeah. This happens so much. It's crazy. Scott,
we're supposed to believe that he is a do-gooder. And also, they give us no details about his home or life or his family until like somebody drops a passing and you missed it because
Because
you weren't listening for the 3 seconds that it occurred,
right,
but
because you don't put critical plot points in like throwaway lines that are 80-yard.
The line was, "Oh, you aced your history test. If your parents are still alive, they would be so proud of you."
Yeah, if they were still alive, like
that might have just been redubbed in post just to try to.
I heard something about your parents would be so proud of you. I didn't hear like your dead parents who died back in Vietnam or something.
No, they were dead. There was a reference to them being dead. But the scene was done from afar, so it probably was dubbed in post to try to give you more context.
Was. You were saying the gang members, like the neckbeard gang members, all their lines were done in post.
Oh, yeah, you can tell if you just listen to the movie with headphones on. You can tell what was dubbed in post, and there was a lot of it. Like a scene when the boys are riding their bikes and throwing newspapers. They're so far away, there's no way they could have mic'd them.
And that's why I wonder, like, maybe everyone who's in on this film is related, maybe not, because actors, they do some weird stuff to start. Like, no one starts out doing the big budget movie, right?
No.
So, like, do you think there was anyone who acted in this movie who thought this was like a launching point for their career? And, like, if so, do you think it was like during this movie and the shooting and everything, they thought, hey, this is a good project, it might actually lead somewhere, and then, because I think you can ruin a movie in post, like in editing and like all the things you're doing after the fact, you can definitely take a movie that would have been better and make it way worse.
Yeah, we see that a lot with movies that are killed with a lot of CGI or a lot of redubbing and whatnot.
Like Baby's Day Out might have been objectively a better movie before they did whatever they did to it.
And a lot of green, though.
You could
a lot of green.
Yeah.
Because it was all green screen.
But that was exciting and new at the time. Now I think it's like if you see a lot of green as an actor, you start getting kind of scared.
Well, I mean, you see a lot of chroma key, you mean? Like,
like money. Yeah. Like, oh man, this is terrifying.
I mean, generally, if you see a lot of green, that means that they didn't, superimpose the background.
Right.
Which would be a pretty major mistake.
Okay, sorry.
I
want to speak to that point real quick, though, about Pete's character being all over the place. So it makes this movie a little bit difficult to follow from his... It's like to be empathetic about Pete is a little difficult unless you're paying really pinpoint attention to like what's going on in his life.
Yeah.
And John's seen this movie, 30 times? So like he knows all these little minor details. I didn't like sleep through them, but I was like doing other things while watching this movie.
Yeah, but it's been 10 years or maybe 12 since I've seen it last, so.
Yeah. Okay, so did you have anything more to speak on wardrobe?
Just the fact that it was pretty terrible throughout the movie. The boys were made to look even fatter, and it's basically they said show up in your jeans and a shirt, and we're going to film.
And then the costuming person's going to put you in something dumpier looking.
Yeah, they may have bought some not costume. They may have bought some outfits for like the school dance scene.
Yeah,
but that was about it. Everything else.
As a subject matter expert on the Buttercream Gang, I'm going to ask you. So
it's not a title I've ever wanted.
So is our introduction to Margaret where Scott hits her in the face with a newspaper?
Pretty much, yes.
Isn't she kind of immediately bitchy?
Well, I mean, she did get hit in the face with the newspaper. I don't know if you noticed that detail, but he says, I'm sorry, I didn't see you there. And she says, no one ever does.
What, am I invisible?
Yeah, some really hilarious comeback.
It's not hilarious. It makes me feel bad for her. Like, I'm like, oh man, you are going to be a cutter here in like 3 years. Tops.
He bumps into her at school. He's like, I'm sorry, I didn't see you there. She's like, again or
something else really depressing.
Yeah, and then he like helps her pick up her papers, which instantly means
you didn't seem super interested in my story this morning. Like you're trying to make me hate the love interest character in this movie. I mean, like, it's probably not what you're going for, but that's where you're arriving at.
She just seems kind of more like no nonsense, tough as nails, with a heart of gold. I think it's what they were going for, but she definitely comes off as
that's where
crappy.
They get, but they didn't start off with a very good.
It was all vinegar in the beginning.
You knew that she was going to be, because when was the last time you saw like a pretty cute girl wearing glasses to make her look less attractive show up in a movie and then she doesn't turn into like some kind of romantic interest or some kind of developing character? Like as soon as I saw her for the first time in the entrance, I was like, well, she's obviously going to be like, one of the more important characters, but that's a pretty rough introduction for like one of your, like, she's maybe the fourth official Buttercream member and first inaugural female Buttercreamer, right?
No, Buttercreamette. Yes, they call it the Buttercreamettes.
No, don't they just call them Creamettes?
Maybe.
It's in the credits of the second movie, and either way, it sounds
Creamettes. Sounds terrible.
Creepy.
But yeah, they definitely. She's all just vinegar and vitriol until the school dance. When she turns around, she's a sweetheart. It's pretty much how the movie goes.
Except she's kind of bitchy then too, and I can't remember like, oh, so you don't want to go with me? If you don't want to go with me, you just go or whatever. Like I forget what she said.
She's got some like self-worth issues.
Yeah,
because no boys are interested in her because she's only 15, and by then she has to pick her life mate. So.
Well, I think boys aren't interested in her because like Pete. I keep forgetting Pete's name, and I just want to call him like blah because like I don't care about that character at all, which is sad because he keeps calling her like geek girl and stuff, and it's still this thing where
nerd and
yeah, like I don't know, from a 2017 context, it's like trying to hear those words like with any bile behind them is really hard because the contemporary outlook on someone who's a nerd or a geek, you're like, oh, they're like hipster cool.
Yeah, so and she seemed cool.
She's like trendy,
like a nerd.
Yeah.
The scene where Pete and his two local Utah goons, where they were bullying.
Margaret. Where do those kids come from? Just out of the woodwork?
I somehow he
some kind of like
picked them out of school. I guess
gang starter kit.
Yeah, he started his little gang of sycophants and just guys with no personality whatsoever, which is kind of the theme for this movie. And they used to go around terrorizing the town. Here's the interesting thing: she says she goes to the treehouse where the Buttercreamers are hanging out. And says to Scott, I want you to take me to the dance, pick me up at 7, don't be late. And then Scott goes to do his newspaper route, and then there's Pete and his friends bullying her, making fun of her and saying, oh, you're going to go to the dance. How did they know that? Were they spying?
That's a really good point. I mean, like, I guess if you're trying to give this movie credit where it's not really due, because there's kind of this thing in movies where you can't really assume things for the audience that behind the scenes or between the scenes. You might think, yeah, this is a small town. Word gets around pretty quick.
I mean, she was walking back from the treehouse when they started bullying her.
Word gets around real quick.
Okay, all right. My theory is that they were spying because then they realized that she was a snitch, Scott was a snitch, and that she was spying on them. So I'm guessing they were spying back on the treehouse and overheard her say.
Well, later they like wreck the treehouse and stuff too. Right?
Yeah, but they must have overheard her say, "Take me to the dance." So okay, fine, whatever. But this is a weird scene where the three of them are riding bikes counterclockwise around this girl, and she's like, "Oh my god, I don't know what to do." But it's so easy; she could just run between two of the bikes,
right?
Scream, whatever, and figure something out. But no, Scott has to come to her rescue, push over one of the bikes, and start to rough up the boys.
I don't have any problem with that scene necessarily, just because I think it shows it's helpful. There's in no way is it not helpful, because
she's a tough girl though, so it was kind of weird to see her be like, "Oh my god, I'm so powerless. These guys are riding bikes around me."
I don't know that they were trying to paint her as tough. I think like book smarts and intelligent, and I didn't necessarily get tough coming across.
It's just weird, the whole scene. And then the insults they were hurling at her. "You nerd. What's that going to do for you? Oh, stop snitching on us." Oh.
Yeah.
It seemed like they were really toning it down for make it family friendly.
That's the problem inherently, is like, this is a featured families, whatever, feature films for families film. And they're trying to portray something like a gang coming into your town, but they're also trying to do it in a way that wouldn't offend your pastor's grandma. So like, how do you do that? Like, how do you...
what's the market for this movie after that's done?
Yeah, I don't know. All the people who are related to the people who were in this movie, which even if they buy it or watch it, they probably made their money back at least.
One would hope.
I don't know. It's, you know what though? You look at reviews and things of this movie online, and it's overwhelmingly positive.
It's all this nostalgia based, man.
Do you think? Or do you think it's like just the only people who are aware of it are the people who don't even... I'm not saying they have like an inside track or like whatever, but You saying they might have been astroturfing a little? People that had anything to do with the movie were posting good reviews? No, I just think it's people like who are in your situation where I've got a litany of nothing to compare this against.
Oh, it's possible.
So being like, this is the first and only thing I've seen on a color TV, 5 stars.
Yeah.
I don't know. The reviews are...
The kind of people that think that kids need to watch this with their parents because it's got violence.
Most of the reviews I read were not just for kids. This is a great movie with a great message.
That's the thing. No kid should watch this.
I don't know.
Anyhow.
The hard-hitting moral message didn't get to me at all.
Here's the thing, though. At least we could see what the message was trying to be.
I think.
But...
Be a pushover. Be a little bitch.
Yeah, basically be a little bitch. Let bullies walk all over you, and everything will turn out.
And then they'll eventually start a Buttercream Gang Chicago. What did she call it? Chicago sect or Chicago branch? Anyway,
who the hell cares? Anyhow, let's talk about a movie that has no discernible message, and that's the Buttercream Gang 2: Escape from Treasure Mountain. Or The Secret of Treasure Mountain. I don't freaking know. From
Treasure Mountain. Oh no, there's all this treasure. Let's get away. It's terrifying.
Oh, it's too heavy.
It is too
heavy. It fell down into the center of the earth. It's
freaking
Mordor.
Gone. Yeah.
Apparently it fell into the lava pit of Mordor. The
world's only bottomless pit.
That was Mordor, right? Where the ring got thrown into?
Oh, yeah.
So it's pretty much the scene
technically it's the fires of Mount Doom in
Mordor. The fires of Mount Doom in Mordor. Yeah. So it felt very much like that, minus all the special effects and all the acting and all the famous actors, and minus a good plot and just not wanting to kill yourself after watching the movie.
Well-developed characters you care about, yeah,
and a real good plot and a real good message.
So, John, I got to tell you, in the first movie, it's Buttercream Gang, I really like Scott. They really got me to like that character. I thought he was great.
You know what, though?
Yeah.
They introduce this character, Pete. He's like the antagonist, and he turns life around, but we still haven't had everything's patched up. So what could we do in the sequel?
And I feel bad for Pete, and I kind of empathize with him, too. So I'm really hoping I see a lot from Pete.
Plus Scott and Margaret have this new relationship. It should be interesting. I wonder where this is going.
They have so many places to go in terms of a sequel.
So what was the sequel about again?
Yeah, you remember that fat dumpy kid they kept making fun of the entire time in the first movie?
Elon?
No.
Elron?
L. Ron Hubbard. Yeah, no.
Eldon.
Yeah. You know, the one that was the butt of everyone's joke in the entire town?
The fat kid, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, the one that's in the middle between how fat.
The one has to be motivated by. Okay, so what about him? Is he did he get skinny or did he have to develop a personality or something?
No, he's not more likable than he was in the first movie. It just happens to be centered around him.
You're not telling me that they made the movie centered around him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The whole thing's about the fat dumpy kid. I think they went back. Do you think they went back and watched their original movie and they're like, man, we were super mean to that kid.
We shit all over this kid.
Right, yeah.
Let's give him his own movie.
Let's make Buttercream Gang 2 about his weirdly developing insecurities and low self-esteem.
And the sad thing is, he can't even do the buttercream tasks. As we saw in the first movie, he can't climb the tree. He can't rescue Widow Jenkins. In the second movie, he can't travel a distance of 10 feet to save a little girl from getting strangled by a jet ski rope.
I would think she would get dragged to her death, probably, but yeah. I don't think it was
strangled
around her neck, but I don't know, whatever.
It looked like she pretty close. Anyhow, he couldn't save her, so he's basically a buttercreamer, name only.
Yeah, and man, is he really feeling it too? Because he's just being really hard on himself.
He just creamed himself. He got creamed when he was trying to jet ski.
Did you have a director's cut of this or something?
No, he wasn't jet skiing. He was water skiing.
He creamed himself.
He got creamed.
Oh, okay.
Anyhow, that's what I was trying to say. I didn't try to make it sexual, but that's where it went. Anyhow, but he sure creamed his jeans when he saw this map. When he climbed the mountain.
Don't you kind of wish they had a catchphrase? Something like, you just got creamed. You're like, oh man, I just creamed in my jeans.
No, I don't wish. That would make this movie even weirder. Anyhow, quick synopsis. He finds a map when he's trying to prove himself to the group that he can actually do cool stuff. And just so happens he finds a map when he does that. A paper map that survived 500 years of being in the outdoors in Utah. Iowa.
Blatantly.
Mountainous Iowa with red rocks.
And it's not hidden either. It's out in the elements. That's the thing that makes it even less probable that would have survived that length of time.
So then an evil douchebag with the ponytail is the other half, and he happens to live in the same area. He's a scientist. And then a dead guy has the third half. And then they put all the maps together. And they find the treasure. But wait, whoa. There's conflict.
Let's clarify one rule of filmmaking that they did follow here, which is that if you're a guy who's balding but also has a long ponytail, you're never going to be the good guy.
Yeah, you're going to be Captain Douchebag.
At best, you're going to be the guy who's redeemed at the end of the movie, which is what they do here. Yeah, but
which he didn't deserve because he committed many crimes, and many of them against children.
He was a bad guy. Like, he should have been in jail at the end of the movie.
Arguably tried to kill.
If Mormons believed in putting people in jail, he would have been in jail at the end of the movie.
Yes, he would have been in jail. And okay, so basically, they assemble this map together. Then this bad scientist dude with the ponytail steals the map, but fortunately, Eldon's got a photographic memory, so he remembered how to get to the treasure. That was placed in the mountain by 3 guys that looked just like this professor and his 2 bumbling henchmen, because they were the actors that played the professor and the bumbling henchmen.
So lazy. I mean, is there any other excuse for the guys who are supposed to be 500 years older are the exact same actors who play like your...
And the 2 guys that help him out say, our family swore to always help his family. So basically they're in servitude.
That's all the explanation you guys need and deserve.
Yeah, so we got this big doughy guy with the mustache who's kind of funny, and then this guy with the beard who's not funny.
In terms of bumbling,
yes.
the larger guy's funnier just in terms of the fact that he's the new fat joke guy.
Yeah, but he played his role pretty well. It was pretty stupid, but it provided a little comic relief.
Looked too competent. Did you get that feeling at all? Like he didn't.
The skinny guy with the beard?
But he's got like a full head of hair and a nice beard, and he's in decent shape. I didn't feel.
He should have been the main henchman. Maybe.
I feel like you could tell me that guy was a computer programmer who did this sometime on the weekend and be like, oh, I believe that. Yeah, he looks like he's fairly competent.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So basically, spoiler alert, they find the treasure, and Eldon tries to bring it home, but then the bad douchebag scientist finds Eldon and says, no, this treasure's mine. And then they pick it up, and it's just like Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark. There's a big earthquake, and the treasure, they had to drop the treasure. And the treasure falls into a big pit, and Eldon chooses to save the douchebag scientist. And the douchebag scientist tells him later that if he was in the same position, he would have chosen to save the treasure.
Well, here's a weird thing about movies in general, but definitely this movie, right? So you have, the map is basically just a picture of a cave.
Yes.
Right? It wasn't like, here's...
With a couple, like, Cub Scout landmarks. Like, here's a tree. Here's a river. Here's a bridge.
Exactly. So it's not like, 100 paces this way, yada, yada. They're not digging anything up. They get to this treasure chest, and it's literally in a cubby in the side of a wall.
Yeah. And they find a cave.
And it's in like a national park, by the way. It's like, I don't know.
They find a cave, which is obviously some sort of a set.
Any junior spelunker could have found this chest hanging out in the side of a wall.
There's a lot of natural light shining in that cave, which means that the cave would have been explored for the past several hundred years, many times by many people. The treasure would have been found.
By many different tour groups. Yeah. I mean, like
you're not going to find a single cave in this country that's exposed to daylight that has not been at least mapped or is it not known of.
But hold on, John. That was the red herring treasure chest.
Ooh,
the real treasure chest was up where the nightlight was.
Which road? Which road was the treasure chest?
Middle road. No.
The low road?
No.
He took the low. No,
the high road.
The high road. That's right.
Yeah.
And the instructions said take the high road. So apparently there were roads in this cave. And there were multiple roads.
Oh yeah, it was paved.
So he took the high one.
Thousands of people drive through this cave every day.
And all the gold baboons or doubloons or
doubloons, 2,100 Spanish baboons.
Yeah, they were in perfect shape, not tarnished at all.
No, they had no signs of aging. It was almost like they were movie props.
Yeah, almost like those. You would crack them open, and Eldon would have eaten the chocolate out of the inside of them.
Which I'm sure he tried to do. It would have been funny if he bit one of the coins or something, but I don't think they have good writers for these movies.
All I know is that gold is really dense. It's, I think, double the density of steel. So I'm not quite sure what the specific density of it is, but I know it's really heavy.
Steel's an alloy, right? And it's a combination of aluminum and iron, something like that.
No, it's iron and cobalt or carbon.
But those are both way higher up on the periodic table. So you're probably right about, even those two combined have half the weight of gold. So gold's definitely heavier.
But you don't automatically get more and more dense as you go up. Generally you do, but not always automatically. So But
in this case, I'm pretty sure you
Oh,
can.
yeah. I could look it up in Wolfram Alpha, but I know gold, basically, 2 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot box of gold coins is going to be really freaking heavy. Like, I don't know if 2 guys could carry it. Maybe they could. Maybe I'm thinking gold's heavier than it is. But
based on the dimension of those boxes, I don't think it'd be a problem. I think Eldon himself probably could have lifted it.
Here's the thing. I don't care what that box is made of. Whatever the 15th century materials is made out of would have crumbled after like 30, 40 years.
Oh, yeah. There's no reason they should have been there.
In the outdoors. There are animals going through there. Indians had mapped out the caves pretty well because they killed the guys, but didn't get the treasure. All sorts of things. You can see the elements could get in there because there's daylight.
Mm-hmm.
So, water.
You're talking suspension of disbelief elements.
Yes.
Which, I can see exactly what you're talking about for every single one of these points, but that's not even where I really have a big gripe with this movie.
What's your gripe then?
What is the moral of this movie? Like, what is the lesson that I'm really supposed to be learning?
Right, so we didn't really provide a synopsis. Basically, old man Van de Graaf, or whatever his name is, Mr. Graaf.
Who, by the way, at the end of the first movie is doing so well that when, Pete, right, comes in to try and rob him, he's like, here's $274. Do you need more? I'll go get it on my bank
He's
account.
a really bad businessman.
So
he's losing his store.
He's bust.
He's losing his house. He's losing his car because he doesn't even have a car that he can ride.
So maybe he shouldn't have been so nice to all those people that came in and robbed his store.
Maybe he should have paid his bills first and then paid Pete the rest. And maybe he shouldn't have let Pete steal snacks from him because apparently that's what put him under. Anyhow, he has to sell his house. The boys want to basically save his house. But the guy's house is already on the market, so it's either foreclosed or it's going to short sale. It's not an easy thing to just say, hey, bank, here's money. We're buying this house back.
We found a sack of gold coins.
Suspend disbelief. They want to raise money. So Eldon, here's the thing. Eldon is the only guy with a heart of gold because he's the only guy trying to raise money. His friends don't give a crap. They don't buy. Scott,
and it's good timing for them, but Scott's obviously going through puberty and he's on his way to becoming his own version of Pete who doesn't care about buttercream stuff anymore
himself, but
right, exactly. So he's sniffing around that hole, and it's like the whole time he's kind of preoccupied, doesn't care.
And Landon or whatever, Lonnie still has no character developed.
Zero.
So he's
zero-dimensional character.
He's sitting at home listening to Kenny G and watching
Grateful Dead.
No. Sitting at home watching daytime TV because that's what Lanny
Can we
does.
agree that the best character in both of these movies, both times, is Scott's dad?
Scott's dad is awesome. He's a guy with a big old mustache and curly hair, great voice, good actor.
And John thought he was going to try and in the 2 years between the movie, maybe he'll get a makeover to be more contemporary. Nope, he doubled down on being from the 70s.
Yeah, he kind of went more towards
at most 80s. He looked like
Eastbound and Down guy.
Kenny Powers, Danny McBride.
A bit of a Danny McBride with just a mustache.
But also, now he looks a lot like the main character from Magnum P.I. Tom Selleck's character in that show.
With curly hair, yeah. He's a good looking dude. Decent actor. But yeah, he definitely one of the better actors in the movie. So then Mr. Graff shaved his beard, which is weird. They should have just put a fake one on because you don't recognize him. He's losing his house. Eldon decides to save the house, so he's going to find the gold doubloons, and he's going to.
Does he really care about saving his house though, or does he just
wants to be a hero?
Yeah, exactly.
He wants to be recognized for doing something good, so he doesn't even want. He doesn't even want to do good.
Is that a good reason to try and be a hero?
So he's doing the right thing for the wrong reason, as they say, and they never really touch on that.
No, they don't. That's not the moral of the story. It's not like, hey, you're a hero in doing what you do every day. No, I don't know what is their moral lesson in this whole thing. Go ahead. Sorry, I don't mean to keep stepping into your synopsis, but
what else of a synopsis is there to give?
The guy's losing his house. Eldon wants to save it by finding this treasure.
Here's the crazy thing: the movie's 90 minutes long. Let's say the first 70 minutes are preparation for them going up to this mountain, and then they spend the next 15 minutes on the mountain, and then 5 minutes wrapping up. But they could have carved a lot out. There's a lot of bumbling bad guy slapstick.
They could have cut a lot out of the first movie. I felt like there was an entire baseball game played in the first movie.
There was. So he goes to the mountain, as we said. He finds the doubloons. They fall into the hole, but he saves the douchebag's life. The next scene, he's back at his lemonade stand about to cry because nobody wants to save Mr. Graff.
Right.
or actually save his crappy
Which,
house.
by the way, like I was convinced that that was some actual good acting by Eldon. I thought he looked actually sad and maybe
maybe he realized that
getting
his
ready to roll a
acting
tear.
career was never going to go any further than this, but
maybe.
regardless, so he's sitting there and then all of a sudden this douchebag comes up and says like, hey, you taught me a lot of stuff. Here is all the doubloons I have, which is probably more than enough to pay for the house.
Right.
And then everyone from the town swarms in and starts buying lemonade. And the message was crap. Like,
right. It was like it's the end of It's a Wonderful Life, where he is almost. What does George Bailey say at the end of It's a Wonderful Life? Do you remember?
Well, I saw the moon.
No, that was more towards the beginning.
Okay. No, it said God blesses everyone.
But he's
No, it was a Christmas
basically it's
Carol.
the same idea that he's like, oh, I'm rich because I have friends.
Yeah, who also dumped a bunch of money on him.
So it's a Wonderful Life moment of, hey, cool, look, I have people who care about me. I did a thing. Maybe I can be a hero after all. But I don't feel anything like at the end of the movie.
No, because the douchebag guy, who he committed many crimes trying to get these doubloons, he somehow escaped jail.
Yeah.
Or even prosecution.
I don't know that I even need justice against that guy. Like,
But
if
it's
that
so
guy got
weird.
locked up, it would make more sense as a movie.
But people don't change, especially guys like that. And he only changed because he lost the money. He lost the treasure. So, like, how sincere is that?
Plus,
I could have done without seeing him at
Yeah.
the end of the movie.
I'll agree.
Or at least he could have cut off his ponytail first.
For as much as the first movie is kind of write your own ending about Pete, or we're not going to show you different things, why not make the antagonist in this one kind of the same thing? Like, you write your own adventure on
Yeah.
what happens to that guy. The real story here is
They wrapped
Eldon.
it up in a tidy little bow. And here's the weird thing. Mr. Graff comes and pays him money for a cup of lemonade, but the whole benefit's for him, so that was weird. Everyone in town swarms in.
But he's the first one to pay for lemonade.
Yeah.
Right.
Everyone in town swarms in and buys a cup, and I guess we think that they saved the house. So
That's where they do the write your own adventure part. Like, well, okay, what does this money go towards?
Well, we know what it goes towards.
Hopefully renovating
We
the
know where the
homeless
money
shelter.
goes. Back to the prop room.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. Back into the wallets of the people who so graciously allowed them to film it in the first place.
So the message is shitty things will happen to you, but in the end, everything's going to be A-okay.
I guess.
But here's the thing. Eldon failed.
Didn't he?
He
Right?
did.
Yeah.
He didn't succeed in getting the treasure, which is fine, but like the whole point was for him to prove to himself that he could do something cool.
And couldn't you argue, and you kind of have been, he's closer now than ever to being to the treasure. Like, he at least knows where it's at.
It's not like it fell into the center of the earth. It's at the bottom of a hole in a cave. Like, you could send a group of spelunkers down there to get it.
That's an obstacle, sure. But it's not like...
Buttercream Gang 3? Spelunking challenge?
I don't know who you're going to... yeah, I mean, they're all still alive. I don't know who you're going to cast, though. Margaret's about 40, I think, at this time.
Those are all the boys.
Yeah, they're like in their
Pete's probably 45.
Early to mid 40s, yeah.
As pressing as that is, Mr. Graff's probably dead.
Yeah. As whatever that is. He adds nothing to the second movie, right? Like, the fact that you also don't necessarily recognize him because he does have kind of like a trademark beard, and then it disappears in the second movie, which is only like a year after, right? Or something? Like a year or two. Is really, really depressing.
It is.
And you can say whatever you want about these movies and how maybe they're limited in the fact that they're made by some Mormon church group or what have you. But I don't know. You can still make a good movie, a good kids movie with a good message, and it doesn't have to be... I mean, it doesn't have to be a Christian message, and it doesn't have to be, I don't know, so serious, and it doesn't have to be so boring.
But it can also apply better to real life. It can have real life lessons.
Right.
Because he literally in church, he says, if you do good things will happen to you. And that is not true at all.
Nor is it a good reason to do good things.
No. Because then what's the point then? You're just doing it because you're storing up the proverbial treasure in heaven? So you don't really care about the people you're doing
I think
good for?
it goes into what my brother Joel, who you might know from Enlightened Gamer or episodes of this podcast even, talks about a type, and I think he got it from somewhere too, but he talks about fire insurance Christianity.
Yep.
Where people are only good based on the fear of hell and the reward of heaven. Well, those aren't compelling reasons to do anything. Like, be good, be a good person. It seems
because all your good deeds are insincere if you're just doing it for fire insurance purposes.
Right. Be a good person because you care about things.
Doing good deeds. So, yeah, I mean, coming from a very strict evangelical background, I'm very familiar with the fire insurance sect of Christianity.
It's a big fear tactic.
It is. The whole threat of hell. That's a good point. So, like, I think they're trying to touch lightly on that in this movie. Like, you have to do good because it's what the religion tells you to do. Well, no, do good because it's good for it. It makes people feel happy when you do good things for them, and it just makes for a better world. That's a good message.
So, for your benefit, I had you watch another kids movie, or we'll talk about it briefly, just as a comparator. Moments before we did this podcast, a movie you've never seen before, Heavyweights, filmed almost at the exact same time frame as these two movies, starring Ben Stiller, Jerry Stiller, a bunch of people you've never met before. But it's a Disney thing. Oh, Kenan Thompson, very young Kenan Thompson, and
Jeremy
Irons. No,
the guy from Arrested Development.
Jeremy Piven.
Also not him.
Jeffrey Tambor.
That's the one.
All right. Anyway,
that's the idea.
So, what was the story behind Heavyweights, and like what was the plot, and what was the big takeaway point you think they were making?
Well, he was a big kid. He wasn't quite an Eldon, but he was a big kid. He got sent to Fat Camp, and Fat Camp was going through some ownership issues, and they were purchased by Ben Stiller's character. I don't need like a whole synopsis
necessarily, because I would love to talk about this movie. I think it's fantastic.
And he was a douchebag, and they defeated him.
Right, but what was like the takeaway for the kids? Because I feel like there's definitely a moment in that movie that they built up to.
Takeaway was, you take personal responsibility for your life.
Do things for yourself.
Yeah,
do things healthy because they're important to you.
Be healthy because you don't want to die of any diseases. But like, don't do it because someone's telling you to do it, because it's what you know you need for yourself.
Right, and you know that you are worth it to do these things for yourself, and like you have other qualities and things.
Yeah.
So take responsibility for yourself, and if it's important to you, lose the weight.
But I think that what you won't hear in a feature films for family movie, but like the idea is you need to love yourself,
right?
And not like be like so really conceited and I love myself, but no, you have to be so comfortable with yourself that you have to be a person that you could love.
Your weight is in a way a reflection of your psyche, I think. At least in terms of if you're stressed out or if you have different like mental health problems going on, it can be reflexive in your weight. I mean, I don't know, but that's beyond any of that. Absolutely love yourself. See the value in yourself as a person,
and better yourself for that reason, so you can be more valuable, and you can be more comfortable with yourself.
Yeah, exactly. But you are already a good person. Like, because you're overweight, you're not a bad person, which Buttercream Gang 1 is like, if you're fat, you're worthless. You're the person to laugh at.
If you're a gangster, you're worthless.
But I'm not even trying to bring up necessarily any of that about Heavyweights, other than there are a few moments in that film that are just genuinely feel good, right?
And genuinely funny, and they didn't even have to go into blue comedy.
Yeah, they didn't have to be blue or anything. They did one thing that made me and John both laugh incredibly.
Yes.
The part where Ben Stiller's stunt double, no doubt, was doing a bunch of back handsprings and does a backflip, then slips on a bunch of liquid or whatever, the stuff that he threw on the floor after he walks on all this glass. So like, it's the villain defeating himself, but it's also just completely unexpected. And
you expect him to nail it because he does 7 different flips in this backflip. Slips at the end and just like crushes his spine on the wall. It was hilarious.
And it's super unexpected, which I didn't know there was a Judd Apatow touched project at all, but it kind of feels like it going back and watching it now. But there are a couple different scenes. So there's a scene where the kid's feeling bad about the fact he didn't get to ride the go-karts. Mm-hmm. And there's a humanizing scene between, the older camp counselor and the love interest is watching, unbeknownst to Pat, but it's just like this cute scene where he's like, well, I'll push you in the go-kart,
Yeah. And here's the thing, there's a great scene in the Buttercream Gang between the dad and Scott and between the coach and Scott, but they very much are up here in their authority role,
right?
And he's down there, and they never like get to the point where they're like talking as
is like that's the thing.
Not
You feel
equals,
like they're
but-
friends.
yeah,
like
they don't they don't feel like they're friends in the Buttercream Gang.
Like-
There's definitely a
Jerry and
teacher
Jerry and Pat,
relationship.
because later on at the end of the pier, Pat's talking about like, man, don't you ever kind of want to be those guys though, like the ones that are in shape and this sort of thing. And he's like, nah, screw those guys, man. Whatever, like screw those jocks. And like Jerry ends up making Pat feel better, and you're like, man, that was another good moment too, where like just because they relate to each other well as people. This is now a better moment. And
Here's
I don't
the
know,
thing
the
about
whole
that
thing where
movie.
like they clip the wings on him right
Yeah.
before he races at the end. You're like, man, this is really cool. Like you feel like these kids care about each other.
And it was a callback to something they set up earlier too.
Yeah,
which
exactly. They've built
is very
these moments
important.
because otherwise you're just importing them. You're just like you're placing these moments where like
Is that what that's called? Is that a callback?
yeah.
Yeah. So then there's also a brick joke, which is where you set the joke up early in the movie, and then the brick hits you in the end.
Right.
And that's a good thing too with plot and character development, which Buttercream Gang did not have really.
No,
It
because
was just one. It was one ballad with nothing. Not a whole lot of callbacks.
it was just scene to scene.
Yeah.
What do we need to do to tell the story now? And there's no
and
no
poetic
actual
device. No.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, this so
Or not poetic. You know what I mean? Like no real. Well, I guess no really creative plot devices. Really, it was just one linear story.
you feel like Jerry is a better kid at the end of Heavyweights
yes.
than at the beginning. You
I
just feel like
Scott's the same damn kid.
you feel like you just know more about Scott at the end of the Buttercream Gang.
Yes.
So you don't feel like he really had much progress other than he did learn like one very specific thing, but he's not himself. I don't feel like there's going to be lifelong impactful change or anything. Whereas with Jerry, you feel like, oh, that was actually, a meaningful, formative part of his life, a summer he will never forget. But they build that moment. I guess that's just the difference between Disney and feature films for families.
Here's the thing too. In the Buttercream Gang, name for me one adult who was wrong or made a mistake.
Oh, okay.
Can you think of a single one?
The Widow Jenkins.
No, but like every adult has perfect judgment in that movie, and even the aunt in Chicago, as soon as he gets out of hand, she sends him back to Utah. So like right there, I mean, she didn't make any bad choices. It was situations outside of her control which caused Pete to go down the tubes. But what I'm trying to say is, in Heavyweights, which I don't know why we're comparing these two, but like, let's do it.
I just wanted you to see what
adults made mistakes in that movie.
you got to share with me a couple
yeah.
of movies that you were forced to have on you as a kid. Basically, I'm sharing with one with
Woefully
you.
watched Heavyweights.
I'm sharing one with you that was like as a thing that
I don't want to
appreciated
do
as
a
a kid.
disservice to either movie by comparing them, but like there are a lot of things we can compare and contrast.
Right.
And the fact is, adults make mistakes, and you see that pretty clearly in Heavyweights. You never see that in the first Buttercream Gang movie. Every adult is perfect. They do no wrong. They're great pillars of leadership. They give great advice. So that felt kind of weird.
Do you think that has anything to do with it being a project of the Mormon community who wants to keep people as seeing adults as authorities, whether or not they're infallible or not?
Absolutely, but it felt weird. It felt like
it's inhumanizing, like because when you can't see a character's flaws,
exactly,
you don't care about that character.
And like I said, I appreciated the coach, I appreciated the dad, but at the same time, they were perfect.
Yeah,
and so it basically was just about the kids then, and it just gave the film even less depth because the adults were perfect; they weren't flawed people too.
Here's like I'm trying to think of even memorable. It's really hard to remember different parts of the Buttercream Gang, either movie. Because you don't relate to the characters.
Lucky you.
Because, so like think in Heavyweights, there's the scene, it's a really funny scene, they all get to camp, and there's basically some code word said, it's like, alright, empty all your candies you brought with you into the different, like, hidden
hidey
storage
holes.
areas, in our cabin. And there's the English kid he met for the first time, and he has a goof where all the chocolate that he was carrying, he basically had, like, taped to his body, and it, like, melted onto him. So they have this opportunity where I think Sims is the one who like takes a handful of it off of the kid's like stomach and then goes, oh, it's gross, and licks it anyway. So you built that thing where Sims is funny in that way, and he's kind of like gross out humor or whatever, but also you've had the English kid be a little bit bumbling, but both characters become more human because those are things that you could either, people like that or you can relate to yourself.
Yeah.
Like I've been in a situation like that, or like, oh, that's so much like my friend fill in the blank.
For sure. And not once did
Shout
I
out to Phil in the blank, our
yes,
good friend.
And not a single scene in the Buttercream Gang made me say, wow, I can relate to that guy.
No, not at all.
They just had this perfect, it was like a caricature of like the perfect Mormon home life. The two parents, all the kids and bunch of kids, the room with the bunk bed.
That's what I wonder about too. Is this as dark as the Mormon culture goes, as they think a kid has gotten into miscellaneous gang fill in the blank, who knows? And they can't really imagine what that's like because they're all so sheltered.
Yes.
That this is the worst thing that could happen to a community.
All right, so like his vandalism was, the extent of it was breaking glass bottles on train tracks.
Yep.
A little graffiti.
He basically knocked some stuff off the shelves at the store. That's his
maybe a couple $100 worth of damage.
Magnum opus as a criminal, as a career criminal.
The more intense scene is where he hires a guy off, I don't know, the
Craigslist.
Personals.
Okay.
The M4M Personals in the newspaper. Tries to get the guy to
Do you
fake
know what
a
that
heist.
Is, that part too is just weird in that how again Andy Griffith's show is that the dude shows up no weapon at all and is just, give me this treasure.
Did he have a knife?
No. He had Pete in a chokehold, I think.
Yeah, so he's
not brandishing any weapon at all.
He's trying to get his.
He's extorting
poor grandfather,
Pete's
grandpa. To give him his gold doubloons. So then the Buttercream Gang goes and foils the robbery, only to find out that Pete staged it. So like this is the worst of what Pete's done. Where real gangs, they seem to gloss over the whole drug thing. Prostitution, violence, drive-by shootings, those sorts of gang elements that you hear about in Chicago all the time.
Blank banging, what is it again?
Gang banging.
So, Buttercream gang banging.
Also, none of his fellow gangsters had tattoos, none had piercings. They were all a bunch of white boys from Utah.
Yeah, it's just really hard.
Pasty white boys from Utah.
I think it takes you out of the film completely when that's as bad as it gets, and it's just... we're going to watch another movie at some point, right?
I had no idea.
Dark Dungeons, based on a chick tract.
Yes.
Chick tract. And it's kind of in the same vein, although this one was done a little bit tongue-in-cheek, unbeknownst, I think, to the creator of the original Chick tract, John T.
Which a tract, for those who don't know, is a piece of literature that certain evangelicals hand out to try to convert people to Christianity. But there was a guy named Jack Chick who was an artist.
Jack T. Chick, is that what it is?
Jack Chick, yeah. He was an artist who created a bunch of tracts that were... He tried to make them current with current interests. He made one... This one is about Dungeons and Dragons. He made others about various pop culture things, basically to try to pique the interest of those who would otherwise throw a tract away.
And the Buttercream Gang are both under this category where the best way to lampoon these movies is to do them seriously.
So take them at face value.
And they end up being a satire. So
you take them at face value and they're hilarious.
Just, I don't know. It's another one of these movies. I think I'm a little mad at you for making me watch this, but not nearly as much as Baby's Day Out.
That's good.
Did you have anything else to say about this turd?
No, I mean, I don't really think we could even fix the movie.
I could, I think.
Oh, we did talk about it before.
No, I'm not talking about my crazy fan theory.
No, not the porn one, but go for it.
No, where Pete gets raped to death at the end by a Chicago police horse.
That's very, very out there theory.
It's pretty far. I could get there and it'd be crazy. I think
and then Merv Griffin comes in and says, that was my show.
The thing that you need to do to fix this movie in either way is that when Pete comes back, he's either the most hardcore gangster of all time, and he's into everything you can imagine, and he just destroys the town to the point that it becomes like Mad Max dystopian future looking, ravished by time, and that's the end of the movie. Like, there's no good thing that happens. There's no lesson. It's just don't ever let people move back to Utah from Chicago or Iowa. The other one would be Pete comes back, but he's like a 1950s Fonzie type gangster. And he does even more campy things in terms of whatever than he does already. I feel like that's closer to what they were doing with this movie, but...
What I think my way of fixing the movie is, I mean, I get it, it's low budget, trying to go for a certain demographic. I'm not going to change that because, I mean, that's what the movie's for. But the ending, what I would have changed is I would have set it so that Pete went back to Chicago and died in some gangland violence, but one of Pete's fellow gangsters that he recruited in Utah came to Scott at the end and was like, you know what, I watched you as Pete beat the crap out of you and as you just turned the other cheek, and you know what, you had a real impact on me, and you've turned my life around.
Right.
That would have felt a lot more genuine than Pete moving back to Chicago and then becoming a do-gooder who started a gang in Chicago that does good.
And instead of being an evil Mexican with the last name Valdez, turns his name back to a good Christian Turner.
Yeah, so what happens is Pete starts out as Pete Turner. He moves to Chicago. He joins the gang. He then tells
He's going by Pete Valdez.
Yeah, he tells his aunt, like, I'm changing my name to Valdez because
I thought it was
that's
Mr.
my mom's
Graff.
last name. Oh, yeah, maybe he told Mr. Graff. So, but it was very subtle because Valdez is a Mexican, or it's a Hispanic last name. So when he's bad, he's Pete Valdez. And at the very end, he goes back to Pete Turner. So is that a slight on Hispanic people? I think so.
It seems intentional. It's weird that they mention it.
The very fact that they went through all that trouble means I think that they were trying to make it look like he...
I'll agree with your how do we fix this movie, right? And I think that
Pete
something bad happens to Pete. Whether he dies or just something worse happens to him.
He gets shot and a bullet severs his spinal column or something.
He becomes a paraplegic or a
becomes
drug addict
wheelie
or
Pete.
yada yada, fill in the blank. It's just something bad. Honestly, because I think the thing is, then the bigger lesson at large Scott could be learning is that, man, you just do your best, and sometimes that's all you can do, and life is just going to happen.
Here's the thing, you can't change some people, but you can impact others sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think that would have made a much better, message. And just to touch real quick, how weird was that scene where they told him about how Pete was making a difference in Chicago?
Oh my gosh.
They set it up like an intervention.
They set it up like Pete was dead, and
Yes.
the way that he died was he got stabbed 86 times.
And that was totally for the audience's benefit. It was just trying to dupe them and give them a little twist. But all it was being really douchey to
cruel.
Scott.
Yeah, it was like cruel to Scott, who
Scott did nothing wrong.
immediately had to go through the gambit of emotions of like what
Oh my
happened
God,
to Pete,
Pete's
because
dead.
Pete's still my best friend. I feel like they did do a good job of him being like, I still care about Pete. There's nothing he can do
Yes.
to change the fact that I care about him.
Well, who thought it'd be a great idea to try to make him think that Pete died and then read the newspaper article about how Pete was recognized by the mayor of Chicago as running a nice gang.
A good gang.
A good gang months after he ran a bad gang.
Right. So, which by the way, if it's me, I think that's a grift. And I think that's where you go with the sequel is like, Pete was pretending to be a good gang so he could like undermine the mayor of Chicago.
No.
Scott has to come in with the Buttercream Gang, and they have
Pete
a big
runs
face
a
off.
good gang, but then he plans a heist where he steals a baby.
But he also recruits Eldon and Lonnie, the bumbling idiots.
Yeah, Lonnie lost some weight, grew a goatee,
Lost some hair. A lot of hair.
I think this movie might very well become Baby's Day Out.
No, I don't think so.
No, it's not. It's not a prequel.
How do you fix the second one, John? Buttercream Gang 2.
Well, first of all, you don't make it, but it's not fixable. The plot is so paper thin. It's so predictable. There's nothing good about it at all.
It's not a 90-minute movie. It should be a 30-minute episode of McGee
special.
and Me. Yeah,
so
it's...
The problem with the movie is that, love or hate the first Buttercream Gang, it did what it set out to do. The second one, we don't know what it's setting out to do, and regardless, it didn't do it.
Okay, I'll interject that you can change the movie entirely, and the way of fixing it is pitching it as a different sequel to the original Buttercream Gang.
Okay, so
if you want.
Okay, this new one is same setting or
Whatever. Doesn't matter. Could be they're all climbing out of cryo sleep 3,000 years in the future.
Oh, wait, so it doesn't have to be about treasure.
It can be
doesn't have to be about treasure.
whatever. It can be whatever.
Okay, so
Take me off the heels of the first movie, though, into the second one.
Okay. Basically, they moved to Chicago. Scott moves there because he wants to be with his friend Pete, and he had a great college opportunity. And Pete and him still run together and do some good deeds. But they get older, and they both have kids. And then Pete sees his son go into gangs, and Scott and Pete must work together to convince the son not to be a gangbanger.
That would be a decent movie. I mean, I think you could make it a decent movie.
And obviously Scott married Margaret, and Scott's kid is a good influence on Pete's kid. I mean, I don't want to become the same thing as the first movie, but like, I think that...
Is Eldon like a Bill Dauterive type character in this movie?
He bought Mr. Graff's store. He's still in Elkridge.
Okay.
But
well, I knew he was still in Elkridge. He's not going places.
So the problem
as
is
they say.
He eats all the profits. So, but so the thing about this movie is the message the second movie has is you reap what you sow. Like, yeah, you turned your life around, but you know, sometimes maybe something he did in the past came back to bite him, and that's what sucked his son out to becoming a gangster. Like something he did in the past, he roughed up some wrong guy, and some guys have vendetta against him. But Pete somehow still has to pay the price for his gang activities in the past. So somehow that affects his family or something. But that'll be my movie.
Okay.
So, but Scott and Pete and whoever else fight together for good and change the world and change Chicago. And,
is that Pete's redemption, is seeing that his son is getting involved with gangland violence, and that's what turns him? Or has he made a change prior to being...
That's not like penance. It's like it's just life sucks, and sometimes you try your best and you lose a kid to the streets. And I think that the movie though is just about him and Scott fighting to get his kid back.
But his son dies or no?
You'll have to watch the movie.
Okay, cool.
All right, how are you going to fix it?
Okay, so it's still about treasure, right?
It doesn't have to be.
And so, no, I'm saying it is.
Okay.
And, not Lonnie, sorry. Eldon finds the map. That's his hero moment where he's like, I found a piece of the map. This is important. We're finding this treasure. We're going to save Mr. Graff's house. And so Lonnie immediately feels even worse, right? He feels the worst of the three, but... Because
now he's fatter than Eldon and no one cares about him.
Right, but
now he's starting to make jokes about him.
But he's the only one who's on call some Tuesday evening on the Buttercream Gang red phone when the Widow Jenkins falls over again.
In the Situation Room?
Yeah, so he has to break in to her house. So he just like throws his shoulder in the door and rescues her, gets her to her feet. But then as he's about to leave, he notices a really old piece of paper on her mantle. And it's the third part of the map. It's not the dead person anymore. Widow Jenkins has it. Being a Buttercream Gang member, though, he knows that it wouldn't be right to take the map.
So he just photocopies it?
That would be stealing. No. This is the 90s, John. Right? Like, I don't even know if they have...
Xeroxes it?
Well, and he's Lonnie, and he's in a town of 30 people, so he's not thinking any of that. So the rest of the movie follows Lonnie's efforts to court the Widow Jenkins so that it'll be his property to
like
use.
The lady killers?
Yeah, so like he's trying to seduce an old woman out of her fortune. And yeah, his motivations are pretty much wrong, but he goes along with it. And in the end, he sees the folly of his ways and realizes it wasn't right to marry an old woman just because she has a map. And
so then he splits the gold with her and divorces her?
No, because he has a heart attack because he's even fatter than Eldon. Anyway.
Hey, I got a question.
And here's the thing. That movie wouldn't be better because it's a better movie. It would be better because at any point...
This is a dark comedy?
The audience would be like, I didn't expect that. That's crazy. And it would go places where you're like, this wasn't telegraphed 10 minutes in advance. Because both of these movies, I knew exactly where they were headed almost the entire time.
Oh, yeah. They followed a very traditional plot.
With the exception in the first movie where Pete is running in to Mr. Graff's store, or he's about to leave. He's like, and Scott is saying to him, what do you want? And he says, I want you to hate me. Why though? I mean, I don't know. I just don't know anything about Pete's character.
Well, that just felt like a cliche.
It's like an emo teen thing to say.
I want you to hate me. No, you're just being a douche.
Yeah. So I'm glad that you felt the same way about that moment at least.
Did you ever feel at once during the second movie that it was set in the exact same place as the first movie?
No, not even remotely.
Never saw Graf's store.
Nope.
Even though he still worked there?
No, he had to sell it, I think.
Okay. So then we never saw the house, those big old farmhouses.
Right.
No farmland, no roads. House.
Like, yeah, which got a significant upgrade too.
But the first movie had like blue mountains. They looked blue in the distance. This one had red ones. They looked like a butte or a mesa.
Yeah, the Red Rock Mountains of Iowa.
Yes, it looked like a mesa or something. It was not. It didn't look like
it
at
looked
all.
Like it was like in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Yes, and the other one was like more of a less desert,
remote Utah.
Yeah, it was a less desert type Utah setting.
Right.
So you could tell they weren't filmed in the same location. They didn't have any of the same sets. The treehouse is arguably different. I felt like this second movie really phoned it in as far as being set in the same location.
Why was there less Scott? Was Scott being a prima donna or something? Because he's obviously the star power. He's like the character I actually did kind of care about a little bit in the first movie.
And he was, he looked good for the part. He had a good voice. He was a decent enough actor, but they went with Eldon, which Eldon definitely matured as an actor in the year between the movie roles, but still.
I never grew to like Eldon.
No, the whole movie you never liked him at all because. Oh, and before I forget, they shoehorned in some new characters. And I felt like
Black Girl.
Yeah, I felt like it was like a
Jessie, I think was her name.
They had some sort of focus group of sorts.
They had there was some serious diversity changes in
there was some diversity and inclusion elements, and which is great, but it felt very shoehorned.
It's fine unless that's the point.
They should have given them like actual roles instead of just like each person had a black sidekick that came around.
Yeah, the indiscernibly Middle Eastern character kind of was there for Eldon,
and he was like super smart. That was his shtick. Which at least they're trying to develop his character a little.
Breaking new grounds on the smart Indian kid.
Yeah.
The first movie was whitewashed, but stay doing that.
Diversity is great, but give them a role. Don't just include them to say, oh, we hit our quota.
That's what I mean. Is diversity great when it's somebody came up to me and said, I have to do this?
Yeah, it's not great then. But if hey, we picked up a new friend to fill a Pete's spot, and his name is Bob, and he's a black kid, that makes perfect sense. But these kids just followed them around.
We have new members of our Mormon church who happen to be Indian and black. We let those people into our church all the time.
Give us some backstory.
They have kids, great.
These kids just showed up. This first movie had all white people, and then they added some, and that's fine. It's great. It just felt very phoned in. It felt like they didn't even try to give them a real role.
Right.
But then again, they didn't really give anyone a real role other than the protagonist and the antagonist. That was it. So maybe it wasn't even just a thing about, maybe it just gave everyone a crappy role.
I think that's just it. It's just the characters aren't written well in general. Even Scott, who has the entire first movie about him, I feel like he's a character who's showing up to read these lines and tell me things, and he's the one I'm supposed to relate to.
Yeah.
But it's still a lot of effort on my part to be like, oh, he's having really real development here.
Yeah.
Learning life lessons.
I had a really hard time following a lot of these movies, a lot of these characters. They were not developed well.
I just didn't care.
I didn't care either. I would never watch it again. I would never make my kids, if I had kids, watch it. I wish I never had to watch it so many times as a kid. But because of this, I think we're definitely going to have a series now of us watching and reviewing various feature films for families because, oh boy, there is a treasure trove of movies out there that we have not even touched.
So what do we want to do next? There's No More Baths.
That one looks pretty terrible.
Who Gets the House? Those are the ones that we know exist.
Well, there's The Rogue Stallion and On Our Own, which I would recommend both of those. On Our Own's kind of cool because it's a bunch of kids breaking out of an orphanage and basically running across the country to get with their aunt and uncle. Terrible, terrible movie, but at least it kind of scratches that fantasy you have as a kid of running away from an orphanage.
Homeward Bound with kids?
With kids, yeah.
Okay. Sure.
They're very terrible movies, but I think we have to do the world a service and review them 20 years later.
Yeah, and we're not going to do it next episode or within the next 10 episodes because I need a break.
I need a break too, and I've seen all of these movies as a kid, and I can't bear to
Plus,
see
I want to get
right now.
I want to get an interview with one of the people who was in one of these movies. So we'll get one of the no names like Alicia Cuthbert or something.
Yeah, Alicia Cuthbert wasn't a feature film for family. I actually had a major crush on her as a youth because she was in a show called Popular Mechanics for Kids.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I had a crush on her. She was in this movie, The Girl Next Door.
Yes, well, I've seen that too.
Oh.
I did not help with the crush. So basically we're going to cover more of these movies at a later date.
Did you buttercream your jeans when you watched The Girl Next Door?
Good Lord. One thing that I'm realizing right now is we're actually going to drive more people to watch these movies than not watch them. But you know what? It's not the end of the world.
Go ahead. The only thing I'll say is
they're deliciously cringy at times, and it's great.
But they're not so bad they're good. They're not The Room. They're not... I was going to say Baby's Day Out, but I think that one's just bad in general.
Yeah. No,
there are reasons you would watch it, though, as opposed to watching these. I think these are just... I don't know, man. They're just a way to fill 90 minutes. That's the only thing I can say about it. Other than the other stuff I've said in the last 2 hours.
Well, before we let before we let the listeners go from this, one of the longest episodes of Let's Talk Movies, I guess, record, I want to ask you a few questions.
Sure. Hit me.
So I had sent you earlier.
What's the budget? $10,000. It was mostly spent on cameras.
No, the cameras were already there.
Like in that town? Like that town just has a bunch of cameras set up?
I think they were church cameras for filming
sermons and what have you.
And magical underwear and whatnot. But anyhow, I've got just 5 questions for you, and I think I'll take a stab at them too.
Hit me.
This is the parent's guide from the back of the Buttercream Gang. These are questions you're supposed to ask your kids after watching the movie.
Oh, great.
When someone wrongs you, does it take more courage to fight or to find another way to solve differences? By the way, a way to phrase the answer in the question. It's pretty obvious what the answer is.
How big is the other kid?
He is taller than you. He's got a deep voice. He's got some muscles. He's wearing a muscle shirt too.
Yeah.
And he's got 2 goons with him.
I can see his muscles.
Yeah.
And he has 2, and
We're outnumbered.
Outnumbered 3-1. I think it takes more guts to fight.
Yes, it takes more courage to fight. Absolutely it does.
I would think so, yeah. You're outnumbered. You're not like
Scott
a martial arts master or something.
I don't want to fight you, but I've got a challenge for you. Should you accept it? I want you to spend the day with me. Whoa! Look at that courage.
Yeah, that sounds like a redirect.
Yes, it was a redirect. It was a deflection. He didn't want to fight.
Big time deflection.
But he still got his ass kicked, ultimately. Here we go. Number 2.
As well he should, by any legitimate gangster.
Does doing the right thing always bring immediate results we can see?
Doing the right thing always bring... No?
Yes, no. But it's very obvious that they're phrasing the question with that answer in mind. Well, we'll skip that one.
They're very leading, yeah.
It's a really...
you said 5 questions. Let me hear. What was number 3?
That was 2?
That was number 2,
We're skipping 2. Well, because you already answered
because I said, no.
Number 3. When people don't like themselves, how do they usually treat others?
When people don't like themselves...
Again, another leading question.
How do they treat others?
Good!
Better than they treat themselves?
You could argue that, but
yeah,
I think the answer they want to see is
the answer they want is how it pertained to the movie, which is to say that Pete had a rough go of it, so that's why he's being a dick. But I think that's such a... Here's the thing. I know of people who've had a rough go of it, and they're still really nice people.
Yeah, and I think there are people that have not had a rough go of it, and they, for whatever reason...
And they're dicks.
Yeah,
so,
they're
like,
dicks.
they're not... I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
Let's talk about mental illness or depression or anxiety or any of these sorts of things that may have affected these kids. This is not a one-dimensional or two-dimensional issue. It's a very multifaceted issue, and they're definitely trying to make it seem like it's simpler than it is.
Joseph Smith would say these are one-dimensional problems, though. Moving along.
This is my favorite.
Did you have a difference in opinion on that?
No, I agree with you. Okay. Why did Scott give Pete his bike?
Because he's a little bitch. Why else would he have done it? There's no good reason. I mean, I don't know. Because his 2 goons were still there, too.
That scene
because
was painful.
Mahatma Gandhi would have done that, who had completely different
Pete did not
religious
deserve
beliefs.
His bike.
No.
He did not earn it in any way.
Nope.
And by giving, at some point, by giving him all these things, you are becoming complicit in some of the bad things that Pete does, because Pete uses that bike and he does bad with it.
Okay, so I have some experience now in being what you might call an enabler.
Sure.
And I think, that's what you're talking about, is that you're enabling his behaviors, especially in continued behaviors of him to treat you like crap.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
And there was a lot of enabling in this movie.
Sometimes the whole town became enablers, and they were like, Pete, you do whatever you want, we're going to bend over to your will.
He could
have been the kingpin of crime at the end of that movie.
He was robbing Mr. Van de Graaf's store.
Mr. Van de Graaf was like... And here's the thing, this movie is uniquely filmed by some kind of church group, because they're like, if you told any other criminal in a town, they're like, you can just go into any store in this town and say, give me all the money in your register. And they'll be like, here, do you need more? Do you need me to bend over for you? Or like whatever. That criminal's going to be like, awesome. So you live in the biggest house there, and you take advantage of everyone every day, right?
That literally happened in this movie. He goes to rob Mr. Van de Graaf, and he says, well, why would you rob me? Here, I'm giving you money. Here's $274. Is that enough? And he's like, no, you dumb old man, I'm robbing you. He's like, you can't rob me. I'm giving you money. It's like saying,
I got the deed to the store in the safe.
You can't fire me. I quit. That sort of thing.
Exactly. You can't.
It's the same logic.
It really is. You can't steal from me. I'm giving away all of my money and earthly possessions.
You can't rape me. I'm into this.
That's
pretty much what he was doing to Mr. Graff.
To Margaret in the director's cut.
Oh, no. The bullying scene was very, very painful to watch, and I don't know, very strange. Anyhow, no, you can't enable people. You can't enable criminals to commit criminal acts. They need to be dealt with. And
what if the police were like that? You can't shoot at me. I'm shooting myself.
The thing is, he never had to face real consequences.
No.
Never had to go to jail. Never had to pay restitution.
No.
Never go through the court system. Never had to be in a chain gang.
Because this was the only town in America that's more quaint than Mayberry.
And that's the thing. You can't always turn the other cheek. That's not the solution when you have people that are going to hurt others like Pete.
Right.
Pete is an abuser, basically. He hurts the people in his life. I mean, he's become that person. You can't just take that lying down. And that's a bad message for kids. And just seeing Scott's dad be so proud of him when he got his ass kicked by Pete and his goons, like...
Yeah, inaction does not equal a lack of responsibility.
Yes. And sometimes inaction is enabling.
Right.
Well, not sometimes. A lot of times. More than half of the time, inaction is enabling.
Correct.
So I think that a lot of lessons could be learned from this movie. And I think just in spite of this movie, a lot of lessons could be learned.
So we've torn apart question number 4, though,
yes.
as being complete
Question number
nonsense.
5 is also complete nonsense. What does unconditional love mean?
I feel like what they want me to say is letting people step all over me and having whatever they want, and just knowing so much that it's enough for me to love someone, and however they treat me is okay. But I think based on my own life experience in the last year and a half, I'm going to have to disagree and say that there's a point at which...
Yeah, you've tried unconditional love, and at some point you still have to pull away and say, I'm done.
The best you can be and the best way you can love yourself is to either take a stand or do what you're implicitly being driven to do, and what you think will make yourself happy, because that's the best thing you can do for yourself.
And why should you suffer because someone else has chosen to be very selfish, and you're constantly putting yourself in a position to get shit on?
I don't know, John. Why would a person do that?
I don't know. You tell me. But look at Scott. Like, look at all the enjoyment of life he's missing out on because he's holding out for Pete.
Right.
No, you don't need to unconditionally love him. He's
just
not a family member.
Break up with Pete, man. Like, there are other dudes out there.
He's not your brother. He's not someone who's very close to you by blood. He's just
this only happens in a town of 30 people that this movie is filmed in, where they don't know people outside of Elkridge, Iowa exist.
The problem is, like, outside of Pete, there were no other boys his age, and the only girls his age were Margaret and a bunch of 4-year-olds. So I guess, like, friends are in short supply, so maybe that's why he had to keep Pete
Then you know
around.
what? Maybe stop shitting on the one friend you have who's a little bit overweight and a little bit less intelligent than you.
Loyal friend. Fellow creamer.
And I think if you kind of show him he has some self-worth, he can probably pull himself up by the bootstraps a little bit and feel like more of a creamer than he is.
He's a very
otherwise.
solid friend.
He's a good dude.
Yeah.
I think he's very genuine.
He's a huge asset to the Buttercream Gang.
Yeah. Don't be cruel.
Landon, also, they could have developed this friendship with Landon. Lonnie, whatever. These guys are like treated like a sack of crap while he's holding out for Pete.
Well, I think the fact that you've called him Lenny and Leonard and Landon and Leroy like goes to the fact that maybe they are really forgettable.
They are.
Blank faces.
Pete is also forgettable. He just wants so badly to be a cool 90s kid.
His face. So there's a subreddit called r/hittable faces.
Punchable faces.
I think it's hittable, but I don't remember. But he deserves to be on it. I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. He does have a very hittable face. No offense, Michael Weathered, I think was the name of the actor who plays that dude.
He's pretty old. It just seems like a lot of these casting decisions were made based on like, oh, I know a guy. Instead of
he'll do it for free
for this role.
Yeah, he's a member of my family who will do this for free.
He really wanted it. Like he had the long, like parted hair.
He was trying.
He was trying, but his voice and his face looked too old. He didn't look like he just went through puberty. He looked like he was 22, 23.
I think Scott, at any point in the movie, even the beginning, could have kicked his ass.
You think so?
Yeah,
well, Pete's skinny.
We'll never get to know. Yeah, Pete's super. Yeah, he's scrawny. He's very lanky.
He
right?
just we never saw Pete.
Whereas Scott's more traditionally, I don't know, average even.
Possibly.
Yeah.
We've possibly recorded the longest Let's Talk Movies, I guess, episode to date at an hour and 45 minutes, which is longer than either of these movies.
Well, this is your baby. This episode is at least, and this is your day out, John. So
it really felt like we just cruised right through. We creamed this episode.
Because it's just because I love talking about this movie. I never want to have to revisit this, so I think it's important to me. We've overturned every stone there is to think about. And like, if I'm trying to think back right now and think, are there parts of this movie we haven't yet talked about other than Scott should stop wearing jean shorts because you're going to get beat up?
Jorts, yeah.
Whatever.
And quit being a little whiny girl when someone throws fireworks in your dance.
Okay, can we talk about that for once? That'd be the last thing.
All right, that'll be the last point.
He throws a single firecracker at Margaret's foot, and then it blows up like it's a stick of dynamite. Did you notice that?
Well, it didn't blow her foot off, but yeah, it was a huge explosion.
It was not. It wasn't a firecracker
like
that wouldn't have even probably registered on the, wouldn't have picked up on the camera. Instead, there was like a muzzle flash looking explosion.
Yeah, like a flashbang grenade or a concussion.
Something crazy. Yeah, enough that it wasn't like, oh, did you hear that? There's like somebody threw one of those snapper things on the ground. Well, I guess it's over now. Let's go back to dancing. No, I interrupted like the entire dance.
And then he like ran out and like basically shrieking, crying, yelling at Pete. What are you doing, man? Leave my girl alone. We don't want to get fisticuffs.
Again, so we've uncovered everything there is to talk about this movie. Yeah. Hopefully, I'll let you take us out. This is, like I said, this is your... You made me endure this.
It's been my baby. And you know what? I think I owe the next 2 episodes to Matt. Or at least 1.5 episodes to movies of his choosing. I've been bestowing gems from my childhood upon Matt,
and they have not gone unappreciated
because I hate him.
Apparently, that's what I'm starting to wonder. Like, I hope the users at home will try and guess as to whether or not, like, okay, I get it. Matt likes some movies that kind of suck, but he's trying to like treat John to some of these movies, and he's having them watch some movies from
gems like heavyweights
from his childhood that maybe aren't so terrible. It's like we're doing some role reversal stuff. Where,
Tell you
like,
what,
now I'm being raised by the crazy evangelist.
We'll give the users a little sneak peek of the future. I'm going to do more Disney movies, like live action ones.
Medford College
movies, like the Absent-Minded Professor, the smartest or the strongest man in the world, stuff like that. I think you'll really appreciate those. So that'll be our next foray into my childhood.
I think that'll be better received. Yeah. And I think I'm going to make you watch some movies with the word shark in them probably somewhere. Or, you know what our next movie we're going to watch is? It's called Ankle Biters. Do you know anything about Ankle Biters?
Not a thing.
So it's a group of little people, vampires, who are also in a biker gang, who are vampires. I don't know if I mentioned that or not. And it's a kind of like horror movie, but imagine that the horror element is a group of vampires that are somewhere between the size of Vern Troyer and, I don't know, at tallest 4'6". So that's the movie we're watching next, folks. Ankle Biters. Look forward to our next episode.
Thanks for joining us. And as I said before, you can find links to both movies on YouTube in the description. Watch at your own risk, and leave a comment. Tweet us, Facebook us, or leave a comment on our website. Let us know what you think about these movies, and if you were forced to watch them as a child. But for Let's Talk Movies, I guess, this is John.
This is Matt. See you next time.
Thanks for listening.